The sound of metal against metal echoed through the narrow corridors as Hyunwoo Kim made his way deeper into the ship. His tool belt clinked with each step, and the heavy repair kit in his hands felt heavier than usual. The lights here were dimmer than in the main areas of the ship. Most crew members never came this far down into the core section. Hyunwoo had been working on the Harmony's edge for 3 years now. The massive ship carried over 10,000 beings from different worlds, all heading to a new home in the Kepler 442 system. It would take 20 years to get there, and they were only 5 years into the journey. The ship was like a floating city, with markets, parks, and residential areas spread across its many levels. But down here in the core, it felt different. Quiet, isolated. Only the hum of the exotic matter drive kept him company as he worked. Today's job was simple enough. Replace some worn plasma conduits in the deepest part of the core chamber. The conduits carried energy from the main drive to the backup systems. Without them working properly, the whole ship could lose power if something went wrong with the primary systems. Hyunwoo reached the heavy door marked with warning signs in 12 different languages. He pressed his hand against the scanner and waited for the green light. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the chamber beyond. The core chamber was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above, and strange blue lights pulsed along the walls like a heartbeat. In the center, the exotic matter drive floated in its containment field, a sphere of pure energy that hurt to look at directly. This was what powered their journey between the stars. He set down his tools and got to work. The plasma conduits ran along the walls like veins, carrying power throughout the ship. Some of them were showing signs of wear after years of constant use. Replacing them was careful work that required steady hands and attention to detail. Hours passed as Hyunwoo worked his way around the chamber. He replaced 6 conduits without any problems. But when he reached the 7th location, something was wrong. The wall panel that should have covered the conduit was loose. Hyunwoo frowned and examined it more closely. The panel had come away from the wall, revealing a space behind it that should not exist, according to the ship's blueprints. He shone his flashlight into the gap and saw something that made his heart race. There was a small chamber hidden behind the wall, and inside that chamber was a single button. The button sat alone on what looked like a control panel made from some kind of dark metal. It was about the size of his thumb, glowing faintly with a soft red light. Around the button were symbols carved into the metal, but they were not like any writing system he had ever seen. Hyunwoo pulled out his scanner and ran it over the symbols. The device beeped and displayed a message that made his stomach drop. Language not found in database. That was impossible. The Harmony's edge carried the combined knowledge of 17 different species. Every known language, symbol system, and form of communication was stored in the ship's computers. If his scanner could not identify these symbols, it meant they were from something older than any of the civilizations on the ship. He took pictures of everything and sent them to ARIA, the ship's artificial intelligence system. Within seconds, a response came back through his communicator. Engineer Kim. ARIA's voice was calm and professional as always. I have no records of these symbols or this chamber in the ship's construction files. Please exit the area immediately and report to Security Chief Park. Hyunwoo stared at the button. It seemed to pulse with its own light, as if it were alive. The symbols around it looked ancient, carved with incredible precision into the metal. Whatever this was, it had been here since the ship was built, hidden, away where no one would find it. He reached out toward the button, then stopped. Arya had told him to leave, and he knew he should listen. But something about the whole situation felt wrong. How could there be a part of the ship that was not in the construction records? Who had built this chamber, and why was it hidden? Reluctantly, Hyunwoo packed up his tools and headed back through the corridors toward the upper levels. His mind raced with questions as he rode the elevator up to the security section. The button's red glow seemed burned into his vision, and he could not stop thinking about those strange symbols. Security Chief Minho Park was waiting for him in his office when Hyunwoo arrived. Minho was a serious man who took his job protecting the ship very seriously. He had served in the military before joining the colony mission, and it showed in the way he carried himself. "Show me what you found," Minho said without any greeting. Hyunwoo pulled out his tablet and displayed the pictures he had taken. Minho studied them carefully, his expression growing more concerned with each image. "Have you shown these to anyone else?" Minho asked. "Only Arya," Hyunwoo replied. "But I think Captain Lee should know about this too." Minho nodded and contacted the captain through his communicator. Within minutes, Captain So-Young Lee arrived at the security office. She was younger than most ship captains, but she had earned her position through skill and determination. The crew respected her because she always put their safety first. Captain Lee examined the images with the same careful attention as Minho. When she finished, she looked up at Hyunwoo with troubled eyes. "This chamber is not supposed to exist," she said. "I have studied every part of this ship's design. There should be nothing behind that wall except solid metal." "What do you think it is?" Hyunwoo asked. Before the captain could answer, Minho's communicator chimed with an urgent message. He read it quickly and his face went pale. "The alien council members want to see us immediately," he said. "All of them. They say it is about what Engineer Kim discovered." Captain Lee and Hyunwoo exchanged glances. How could the alien council members know about the hidden chamber? Hyunwoo had only told Arya and the security chief, unless someone had been watching him while he worked. "Something about this does not feel right," Captain Lee said quietly. "But we need to find out what they know." The three of them made their way to the council chambers, where representatives from all the non-human species on the ship were waiting. As soon as they entered the room, Hyunwoo could feel the tension in the air. The Vorthak representative, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms named Kelnara, stood up when they arrived. Her usually calm expression was replaced by something that looked like fear. "You found the forbidden chamber," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "We had hoped it would remain hidden for the entire journey." "You know about this?" Captain Lee asked, her voice sharp with surprise. "We all do," said another council member, this one from the Zalani species. "Our ancestors encountered such things before. They should never be touched, never be activated." Hyunwoo felt a chill run down his spine. What happens if someone activates it? The alien council members looked at each other with expressions of deep worry. Finally, Kelnara spoke again. "Entire civilizations have disappeared," she said quietly. "Some things must remain untouched for the safety of all." 3 days had passed since the discovery in the core chamber, and Hyunwoo could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the red glow of the mysterious button. The alien council members had made their warning clear, but they refused to answer any more questions about what the button actually was or where it came from. Captain So-Young Lee had ordered the hidden chamber to be sealed temporarily while they figured out what to do. But sealing it did not make the questions go away. If anything, it made them stronger. Hyunwoo sat in the ship's library staring at his tablet screen. He had been reading everything he could find about the construction of the Harmony's Edge, looking for any clue about the hidden chamber. The more he read, the more confused he became. "You look like you have not slept in days," said a voice behind him. Hyunwoo turned to see Eunji Han, the ship's xenolinguist. She was one of the few people on board who could read and speak all 17 languages used by the different species on the ship. Her job was to help solve communication problems and study alien cultures. "I keep thinking about those symbols," Hyunwoo said. Arya could not identify them, and that should be impossible. Yoonji sat down next to him and looked at the images on his tablet. She had seen them before, of course. News of the discovery had spread quickly among the senior crew members. I have been thinking about them too, she said. The pattern is unlike anything in our database, but there is something familiar about the way they are arranged. What do you mean? The symbols seem to follow mathematical principles. See how they repeat in certain patterns? It reminds me of quantum encryption methods, but much more advanced than anything we know how to do. Hyun-woo felt a spark of hope. Can you decode them? Maybe, Yoonji said, but I would need help. Do you know Dong-hyun Choi from the science department? Hyun-woo nodded. Dong-hyun was the ship's quantum physicist, responsible for maintaining the exotic matter drive and understanding how it worked. He was brilliant, but often kept to himself. I think we should ask him to join us, Yoonji said. If these symbols really are quantum encrypted, he might be able to help decode them. They found Dong-hyun in his laboratory, surrounded by complex equipment and floating holographic displays. He was running tests on samples of exotic matter, trying to understand how the ship's drive system worked so efficiently. When they explained what they wanted, Dong-hyun set aside his work and listened carefully. His eyes grew wide when he saw the images of the symbols. These are definitely quantum encrypted, he said after studying them for several minutes. But the encryption method is far more advanced than anything our civilizations have developed. Whoever made this had technology that was hundreds or maybe thousands of years ahead of us. Can you break the encryption? Hyun-woo asked. I can try, Dong-hyun said, but it will take time, and I will need access to the ship's most powerful computers. While the three of them worked on decoding the symbols, strange things began happening throughout the ship. It started small at first. Crew members reported feeling dizzy in certain corridors. The gravity generators flickered occasionally, causing people to feel lighter or heavier for a few seconds at a time. Chief Medical Officer Ji-hae Song was the first to notice the pattern. She came to Captain Lee with a report that made everyone worried. 17 humans have come to the medical bay in the past 2 days, Ji-hae said. They all report the same symptoms: vivid dreams about huge structures floating in space, cities made of light, voices speaking in languages they do not understand. What about the alien crew members? Captain Lee asked. None of them have reported any unusual dreams or symptoms, Ji-hae said. Whatever is happening, it seems to be affecting only the humans. Captain Lee called an emergency meeting with the senior staff. Security Chief Min-ho Park, Medical Officer Ji-hae Song, and Engineer Tae-min Yu all gathered in the conference room to discuss the situation. The symptoms started right after we discovered the hidden chamber, Captain Lee said. That cannot be a coincidence. Maybe the button is sending out some kind of signal, Tae-min suggested. Something that affects human brains but not alien ones. That would explain why only humans are having the dreams, Ji-hae agreed. But why? What makes us different? Before anyone could answer, the ship's navigation system chimed with an alert. The officer on duty reported that they were detecting strange signals from empty space. The signals appeared for a few seconds and then disappeared, like ghost transmissions from somewhere far away. This is getting worse, Captain Lee said. I think we need to consider removing the button entirely. But when she suggested this to the alien council members, their reaction was immediate and intense. Kelnara, the Vorthak representative, stood up so quickly that her chair fell over. You cannot remove it, she said, her voice filled with panic. Moving such devices is even more dangerous than leaving them alone. Then what do you suggest we do? Captain Lee asked, frustration clear in her voice. Seal the chamber permanently, said the Zalani council member. Use the strongest materials you have. Make sure no one can ever reach it again. That will not stop the effects we are already seeing, Ji-hae pointed out. The human crew members are still having the dreams. The gravity fluctuations are getting stronger. The alien council members exchanged worried looks. Finally, Kelnara spoke again. There is something we have not told you, she said quietly. Our peoples have encountered technology like this before, long ago, before we formed the alliance that built this ship. What happened? Captain Lee asked. The species that found it first called themselves the Precursors. They were ancient beyond measure, with technology that seemed like magic to us. But they disappeared from normal space thousands of years ago. All that remains of them are devices like the one you found. Hyun-woo, who had been listening from the back of the room, stepped forward. What do you mean they disappeared? They transcended, Kelnara said, the word sounding strange in her voice. They became something beyond what we could understand. Other species tried to follow their path by using precursor technology. Some succeeded and vanished, like the precursors did. Others were destroyed completely. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. The button in the hidden chamber was not just alien technology, it was a remnant of a civilization, so advanced that they had evolved beyond physical existence. That is why we fear it, Kelnara continued. The precursors left these devices as tests. When a species finds one and activates it, they either evolve to a higher form of existence, or they are destroyed in the attempt. Captain Lee looked around the room at her crew. And you think humans are not ready for such a test? No species has been ready, the Zalani Council member said. That is why they all disappeared or died trying. But even as the aliens spoke their warnings, Hyun-woo noticed something. The dreams that were affecting the human crew members were not random. According to Ji-Hai's reports, they all featured similar images, vast cosmic structures, cities of light, and always a sense that something was calling to them from far away. It was as if the button was trying to communicate with the humans specifically, as if it had been waiting for them to find it. Late that night, as Hyun-woo worked alone in his quarters, Dong-hyun contacted him with exciting news. I think I have cracked part of the encryption, Dong-hyun said over the communicator. The symbols contain coordinates, a location in space far beyond any star system we know about. What else? There is a message too. Just a few words, but I think I have translated them correctly. Dong-hyun paused, and Hyun-woo could hear the excitement in his voice. It says, when you are ready to transcend your limitations, press to begin the awakening. Hyun-woo felt his heart race. The button was not just a device. It was an invitation. An invitation that the precursors had left for any species brave enough to take the next step in their evolution. But the question remained, were humans ready for such a leap? Or would they join the countless other species that had tried and failed? The discovery of the decoded message changed everything on the Harmony's edge. Captain So-Young Lee stood in her private office, staring out at the stars through the large window. The alien council members had requested an emergency meeting, and she knew it would not be pleasant. The dreams affecting the human crew members were getting stronger. Ji-Hai Song reported that 43 humans had now experienced the visions of cosmic cities and strange voices. Some of them were starting to have the dreams while awake, seeing flashes of impossible structures overlaid on the normal ship corridors. What worried Captain Lee most was that the humans experiencing these visions seemed to be changing. They were calmer than before, more focused. Some reported feeling like they could understand things about the universe that they had never been able to grasp before. It was as if something was preparing them for what was to come. The alien council chamber was tense when Captain Lee arrived. All 7 species were represented, and their faces showed deep concern. Kelnara, the Vorthak representative, stood as soon as the captain entered. Captain Lee, Kelnara said, her voice formal and cold, we have made our decision. If the humans continue to investigate the precursor device, we will leave this ship at the next refueling station. Captain Lee felt her heart sink. The next refueling station was 3 months away at a remote outpost. If the aliens left, they would take their technology and knowledge with them. The humans would be alone on a ship they did not fully understand, trying to complete a journey that would take 15 more years. You would abandon the colony mission? Captain Lee asked. We have all worked together for years to build a new home. Some things are more important than one colony, said the Zalani council member. We will not risk our people's existence for human curiosity. What exactly are you afraid will happen? Captain Lee asked. The council members exchanged looks. Finally, an elderly Corvin representative spoke up. He was the oldest being on the ship, with memories that stretched back over 200 years. I was alive when the Threnari found a precursor device, he said quietly. They were a proud species, much like humans. They believed they were ready for anything the universe could show them. What happened to them? First came the dreams, just like your people are experiencing now. Then the changes began. The Threnari started to see reality differently. They could perceive dimensions that the rest of us could not. They began to speak of cosmic truths that sounded like madness to us. The old Corvin paused, his eyes distant with memory. In the end, they activated their device. There was a flash of light that could be seen from 3 star systems away. When we arrived to investigate, their entire planet was gone. Not destroyed, simply gone, as if it had never existed. Captain Lee felt cold. You think that is what will happen if we activate our device? We do not know, Kelnara said. That is what makes it so dangerous. Some species vanish. Others are transformed into something we can no longer recognize. Either way, they are lost to us forever. But even as the aliens made their threats, the investigation continued. Hyunwoo, Yoonji, and Donghyun worked in secret, trying to learn more about the precursor device. They had set up their research station in an abandoned storage room where they would not be disturbed. I have been analyzing the ship's construction records, Donghyun said as he pulled up holographic displays. The Harmony's Edge was not built entirely by our current alliance. Parts of the core technology came from salvaged materials found on dead worlds. Dead worlds? Yoonji asked. Planets where advanced civilizations once lived but mysteriously vanished. The Alliance has been collecting their technology for centuries, trying to understand how it works. Hyunwoo studied the technical diagrams floating in the air. So, our ship is partly built from precursor technology? Not just precursor, Donghyun said. Technology from dozens of vanished civilizations. The exotic matter drive, the artificial, gravity systems, even the air recyclers use principles that we discovered but did not invent. This revelation was disturbing. It meant that the Harmony's Edge was more than just a colony ship. It was a collection of ancient technologies that no one fully understood. There is something else, Yoonji said, pulling up her own research. I have been studying the historical records of species that encountered precursor devices. The pattern is always the same. Only certain species are affected by the preliminary signals. What do you mean? Hyunwoo asked. The dreams, the visions, the sense of cosmic awareness. It only happens to species that the precursors considered compatible. The others experienced nothing at all. Hyunwoo felt a chill. You think the precursors chose humans specifically? I think they chose species with certain characteristics, Yoonji said. Curiosity, willingness to take risks, the drive to explore and grow even when it is dangerous. As if summoned by their conversation, engineer Tai-Min Yu burst into their makeshift research station. His face was pale with excitement and fear. You need to see this, he said, pulling up schematics on his tablet. I have been mapping the hidden systems connected to that button. They do not just run through the core chamber. They connect to everything. The schematics showed a complex network of conduits and control systems that spread throughout the entire ship. The button was not an isolated device. It was the control center for technology that was woven into every major system on the Harmony's Edge. What would happen if someone activated it? Hyunwoo asked. I do not know, Taemin said. But it would fundamentally change how the ship operates. The exotic matter drive would be modified. The hull structure would shift. Even the life support systems would be altered. Altered how? To support life forms that no longer exist in normal space-time, Taemin said quietly. The changes would prepare the ship for beings that have transcended physical limitations. The implications were staggering. The precursor device was not just a test or a weapon. It was a transformation chamber designed to evolve an entire species and their technology to a higher level of existence. But before they could discuss this further, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Emergency lights flashed red in the corridors, and Captain Lee's voice came over the communication system. All crew to emergency stations. We are under attack. Hyunwoo and his team rushed to the nearest observation deck. Through the thick windows, they could see enemy ships approaching fast. The vessels were crude but dangerous, covered in weapons and armor plating. Space pirates, preying on colony ships that traveled the remote routes between star systems. How many? Yunji asked. 12 ships, Taemin said, reading from his tablet. They have us outnumbered and outgunned. The Harmony's Edge was not a warship. It had defensive shields and some basic weapons, but it was designed for carrying passengers, not fighting battles. Against a fleet of pirate vessels, their chances were not good. Captain Lee's voice came over the communication system again. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. All non-essential crew to shelter areas. But Hyunwoo was not listening to the evacuation orders. He was thinking about what Taemin had discovered. The precursor device was connected to all the ship's systems. If activated, it would change their capabilities in ways they could not predict. The button, he said suddenly. What if it could help us? Are you insane? Dong-hyun asked. We do not know what it would do to us. We know what the pirates will do to us, Hyunwoo replied. And we know our conventional weapons are not strong enough. Through the window, they watched as the first pirate shots struck their shields. The ship shuddered under the impact, and the lights flickered. Their defensive systems were already being overwhelmed. The alien council members will never agree to activate it, Yunji said. Then maybe we do not ask them, Hyunwoo said. His words hung in the air as another blast shook the ship. Outside, more pirate vessels were closing in for the attack. Soon their shields would fail completely, and the pirates would board the ship. Everyone aboard would be killed or sold into slavery. Hyunwoo looked at his friends and colleagues. They were scientists and engineers, not soldiers. But they might be the only ones who could save everyone on the ship. The question was whether they were brave enough to risk everything on ancient technology that no one understood, whether they were willing to potentially sacrifice their humanity to save their lives. As the ship shuddered under another attack, Hyunwoo made his decision. He started running toward the core chamber, and after a moment of hesitation, the others followed him. It was time to find out what humans were truly capable of. The corridors of the Harmony's Edge shook violently as Hyunwoo and his team raced toward the core chamber. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls, and the sound of weapons fire echoed through the ship's hull. The pirate attack was getting worse. Bridge to all crew. Captain Lee's voice came through the communication system, strained with effort. Shields at 30% and falling. Prepare for possible boarding. Hyunwoo's heart pounded as they reached the sealed entrance to the core chamber. Security Chief Minho Park had placed an electronic lock on the door after the discovery of the button. But Hyunwoo still had his engineering access codes, and the lock disengaged with a soft beep. Are we really doing this? Dong-hyun asked, as they stepped into the chamber. Before Hyunwoo could answer, footsteps echoed behind them. They turned to see Captain Lee, Minho Park, and surprisingly, several of the alien council members, including Kelnara, rushing into the chamber. Step away from that device, Kelnara commanded, her forearms spread wide in a threatening gesture. Our shields are failing, Hyunwoo said. In 10 minutes, those pirates will board this ship and kill everyone. We need to try something. Better to die as we are than to risk what that button might do, the Zalani council member said. Captain Lee looked between the humans and the aliens, her face torn with indecision. What exactly would happen if we activated it? We do not know, Tae-min said, but my analysis suggests it would transform the ship's capabilities, maybe enough to defend against the pirates. Or it could destroy us all, Kelnara said. That is what happened to the Vorthak expedition that found a similar device 200 years ago. They activated it, and their entire fleet vanished without a trace. Another massive impact shook the ship, and the lights flickered. Through the communication system, they could hear reports of hull breaches in the outer sections. Shields at 15%, came the voice of the weapons officer. We cannot hold them much longer. Yunji stepped forward, her tablet displaying the research they had been conducting. I have been studying the historical records more carefully. Yes, many species vanished when they activated precursor devices, but some of them left messages before they disappeared. What kind of messages? Captain Lee asked. Messages of gratitude. Messages saying they had found what they were looking for, that they had become something greater than what they were before. Those could have been sent by anyone, the elderly Corvan council member said. There is no proof they came from the vanished species. Actually, there is, Dong-hyun said, pulling up his quantum analysis. I have been examining the energy signatures from worlds where precursor devices were activated. The pattern is consistent with dimensional translation, not destruction. What does that mean? Minho asked. It means the species did not die. They moved to a higher level of reality. They transcended the normal limitations of space and time. The ship shuddered again, more violently than before. Sparks flew from damaged conduits in the walls, and the air filled with the smell of burning electronics. Captain, came the urgent voice of the bridge officer. Pirates are launching boarding pods. Impact in 3 minutes. Captain Lee looked at the button, glowing softly in its hidden chamber. Her crew was depending on her to make the right choice. But there was no right choice, only terrible options and uncertain outcomes. What makes you think humans would survive the transformation, when so many other species did not? She asked. Because we are the only species having the dreams, Hyun-woo said. Yunji was right. The precursors only affect species they consider compatible. If we were going to be destroyed, we would not be experiencing the visions. Or the visions are just the first stage of the destruction process, Kelnara said. Then why have they been getting stronger? Ji-hae Song asked as she entered the chamber. She had left her medical station to find them. I have been monitoring the affected humans. Their brain activity is not random. It is organized, purposeful. Something is teaching them. Teaching them what? How to think in ways that transcend normal reality. The humans who have experienced the strongest visions can now perceive mathematical relationships that should be impossible to understand. They can sense quantum fluctuations without instruments. Their minds are being prepared for something. Another impact, and this time pieces of the ceiling fell down around them. The pirates were getting through the outer defenses. We are out of time, Captain Lee said. I need to make a decision right now. Do not do this, Kelnara pleaded. Our peoples have survived for thousands of years by being cautious, by not taking risks that could destroy everything we have built. And look where that has gotten us, Hyun-woo said. Hiding from ancient technology instead of learning from it. Letting fear control our choices instead of curiosity and hope. Boarding pods have attached to the hull, came the report from the bridge. Pirates are cutting through the airlock doors. Captain Lee closed her eyes for a moment, weighing the options. Death at the hands of pirates, or the unknown consequences of precursor technology. Both paths were dangerous, but only one offered, the possibility of something better. If we activate this device, she said slowly, And we survive the transformation. What happens then? I think we become what we were always meant to be, Yunji said softly. The dreams show us cities of light, beings of pure consciousness, civilizations that have moved beyond the need for physical forms. Maybe that is what evolution looks like at its highest level. Or maybe it is a trap, the Zalani Council member said, a way for the precursors to ensure that no species ever becomes powerful enough to challenge them. The precursors have been gone for thousands of years, Dong Hyun pointed out. If they wanted to destroy other species, they would have done it while they were still here. The sound of cutting tools echoed through the ship's hull. The pirates had breached the outer airlock and were working their way inside. In minutes, armed raiders would be flooding through the corridors, killing anyone who resisted and enslaving the rest. I cannot make this choice for everyone, Captain Lee said. It affects every person on this ship. There is no time for a vote, Minho said. The pirates will be through the inner doors in 60 seconds. Hyunwoo looked at the button, then at the faces around him. Humans and aliens, all afraid but for different reasons. The aliens feared change and the unknown. The humans feared missing the chance to become something greater. Captain, he said quietly, you asked me to repair the plasma conduits. I found this device because I was doing my job, trying to keep this ship running safely. Everything I have, learned as an engineer, tells me that we cannot win this fight with conventional weapons. And everything we know as survivors tells us that activating unknown technology is suicide, Kelnara said. Maybe, Hyunwoo said, but at least it would be our choice. Our decision to try something new instead of accepting defeat. Captain, Lee looked one more time at the alien council members, then at her human crew. The ship shook again as the pirates blasted through another barrier. I am sorry, she said to the aliens, but I have to try to save my people. She nodded to Hyunwoo. Pirates have breached the inner airlock, came the final warning from the bridge. Hyunwoo reached out and pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the chamber filled with light brighter than the exotic matter drive, brighter than the stars themselves. The light did not hurt to look at. Instead, it felt warm and welcoming, like coming home after a long journey. And in that light, everything changed. The moment Hyunwoo pressed the button, reality broke apart and rebuilt itself. The light that filled the core chamber was unlike anything any of them had ever experienced. It did not simply illuminate the space around them. It seemed to reach inside their minds, showing them truths about the universe that they had never imagined possible. Captain Lee felt her consciousness expand beyond the boundaries of her physical body. Suddenly, she could perceive the entire ship as if she were seeing it from the outside and the inside at the same time. She could sense every person aboard, their thoughts and fears, their hopes and dreams. The alien council members screamed, but not in pain. They were screaming because they could suddenly see the cosmic web that connected all living things, the vast network of energy and consciousness that stretched across the galaxy. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. But the humans experienced something different. Where the aliens felt overwhelmed by the sudden expansion of awareness, the humans felt like they were finally seeing clearly for the first time. The dreams and visions they had been having suddenly made perfect sense. Hyunwoo watched in amazement as the walls of the ship began to change. The solid metal became transparent, revealing the complex energy patterns that flowed through the hull. The ship was not just a machine. It was a living system, powered by forces that existed beyond normal space and time. What is happening to us? Dong Hyun asked, but his voice sounded different. It carried harmonics that had not been there before, as if he were speaking in multiple dimensions at once. We are becoming what we were meant to be, Yoonji answered, and her words appeared as glowing symbols in the air around them. Outside the ship, the pirate vessels suddenly found themselves facing something impossible. The Harmony's edge was still there, but it was also not there. It existed in normal space, and in parallel dimensions at the same time. Their weapons passed through it without causing any damage. Inside the ship, the transformation continued. The exotic matter drive pulsed with new energy, creating fields of force that bent space and time around the vessel. The hull restructured itself into geometric patterns that should have been impossible, yet somehow made perfect sense to the transformed crew. HFY Song, who had been monitoring the humans affected by the visions, suddenly understood what was happening to them all. "We are not just changing," she said. "We are evolving, becoming something that can exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." The pirates, confused and frightened by what they were seeing, tried to retreat. But the Harmony's edge was no longer bound by the normal laws of physics. Captain Lee, her awareness expanded beyond anything she had thought possible, reached out with her mind and gently moved the pirate ships to a parallel dimension where they would be safe but unable to harm anyone. "I did not destroy them," she said in wonder. "I could have, but I chose not to. I just moved them somewhere else." The alien council members were struggling to adapt to their expanded consciousness. Kelnara, her 4 arms trembling, looked at the humans with a mixture of fear and awe. "You are no longer the same species," she said. "You have become something beyond our understanding." "No," Hyunwoo said gently. "We have become what you could become too if you chose to let go of your fear." But even as he spoke, he realized that the transformation was not without cost. Several human crew members were having difficulty maintaining their sanity as they perceived higher dimensions and cosmic truths that their minds struggled to process. Engineer Tae-min Yu was the worst affected. He stood in the corner of the chamber, his eyes wide with terror, muttering about infinite spaces and impossible geometries. "The universe is too big," he kept saying. "There are too many layers of reality. How can anyone live knowing all of this?" HFY rushed to help him, her medical knowledge now enhanced by her expanded awareness. She could see the patterns of energy in his brain, the places where his consciousness was trying to process information that was beyond normal human comprehension. "Focus on what you know," she told him. "Remember who you are. Use that as an anchor." But it was not easy. The transformation had given them incredible abilities, but it had also shown them truths about existence that were difficult to bear. They could perceive the birth and death of stars, the flow of time across multiple dimensions, the vast loneliness of space between galaxies. Some of the human crew members adapted quickly. Those who had been having the strongest visions seemed to handle the transition better, as if the dreams had been preparing them for this moment. "We need to help the others," Captain Lee said, "the ones who are having trouble adjusting." Working together, the transformed humans learned to use their new abilities to help their struggling crewmates. They created fields of calming energy, shared their own stability through psychic connections, and taught the overwhelmed crew members how to filter the vast amounts of information flowing through their expanded consciousness. Slowly, the panic subsided. The human crew began to adapt to their new existence. They were still recognizably human, but they were also something more. Beings capable of perceiving and interacting with reality on multiple levels simultaneously. The alien crew members watched this process with a mixture of emotions. Some were fascinated by what they were seeing. Others were terrified. A few seemed envious that they had not been chosen for transformation. "What happens now?" Kelnara asked. Captain Lee, her awareness encompassing the entire ship and the space around it, considered the question. They were still traveling toward Kepler 442, but their journey no longer needed to take 15 more years. With their new abilities, they could travel instantaneously across vast distances. "We complete our mission," she said, "but not in the way we originally planned." She reached out with her transformed consciousness and touched the fabric of space-time itself. The Harmony's edge folded reality around itself and emerged near their destination, a journey that should have taken years completed in seconds. But as they approached the Kepler 442 system, they realized that their transformation had given them more than just enhanced abilities. It had given them responsibility. There were other ships in the system, other species attempting to establish colonies. Some of them were struggling with problems that their limited technology could not solve. Others were engaged in conflicts that threatened to destroy their new settlements. "We could help them," Yunji said, her enhanced empathy allowing her to sense the suffering of beings light years away. "Should we?" Donghyun asked. "We are no longer the same species we were. Do we have the right to intervene in their affairs?" It was a question that would define what they became next. They had transcended their original limitations. But with that transcendence came choices about how to use their newfound power. The precursors had left them the tools for evolution, but they had not left instructions about what to do afterward. That decision was entirely up to them. As the transformed crew of the Harmony's Edge looked out at the struggling colonies in the Kepler 442 system, they realized that their journey was not ending. It was just beginning. They were no longer simply human. They were something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy. And they had to decide what that meant for themselves and for all the other species they encountered. The button had been pressed. The transformation was complete. But the real test of what they had become was yet to come. 3 months had passed since the transformation, and the crew of the Harmony's Edge had learned to live with their new existence. They were still human in many ways, but they were also something more. Beings who could perceive reality across multiple dimensions and manipulate the fabric of space-time itself. Hyunwoo stood on the observation deck, looking out at the colony that was taking shape on the surface of Kepler 442b. But this was not the simple settlement they had originally planned. It was something far more extraordinary. The colony existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Buildings made of crystallized light rose from the surface of the planet, connected by bridges of pure energy. The colonists could live in normal, physical space when they chose to, or they could exist as beings of consciousness exploring higher dimensions of reality. "It is beautiful," said Yunji, materializing beside him. She had learned to shift between her physical form and a state of pure awareness, appearing wherever she was needed on the ship or the colony. "The others are adapting well," Hyunwoo said. "Even Tai Min has learned to control his perception of the higher dimensions." It had taken time, but all the human crew members had eventually adjusted to their transformation. They had learned to use their expanded consciousness without being overwhelmed by it. Most importantly, they had learned to help each other through the difficult moments when the vast scope of reality became too much to bear. Captain So-Young Lee approached them, but she was no longer simply a ship captain. She had become something, like a coordinator of consciousness, helping to guide the decisions of the transformed community. "The Vorthak delegation has arrived," she said. "Kelnara wants to speak with us." They made their way to the meeting chamber, a space that existed partially in normal reality and partially in higher dimensions. The alien council members who had remained with them sat around a table that seemed to be made of solidified starlight. Kelnara looked different than she had before the transformation. Her 4 arms moved more gracefully, and her eyes held a depth that had not been there before. The proximity to the transformed humans had begun to affect the alien crew members as well, though more slowly and subtly. "We have received communications from our home worlds," Kelnara said. "Word of what happened to you has spread throughout the galaxy." "What kind of response?" Captain Lee asked. "Mixed," said the Zalani council member. "Some species are terrified. They believe you have become something dangerous, something that could threaten the natural order of the galaxy. And others are curious. They want to know if the transformation can be shared with them. This was something the transformed humans had been discussing among themselves. They had the power to help other species evolve to their level of existence, but they were not sure if they should. The transformation was irreversible, and not every species might be ready for it. There is something else, Kelnara continued. Ships have been arriving in this system, not just from Alliance worlds, but from civilizations we have never encountered before. They are all drawn here by the energy signature of your transformation. As if summoned by her words, Dong Yun appeared. In the chamber, his form flickered between solid matter and pure energy as he spoke. I have been monitoring the approaching ships, he said. Some of them are carrying refugees from dying worlds. Others are explorers seeking new forms of existence. A few appear to be researchers studying the effects of precursor technology. How many ships? Captain Lee asked. 47 so far, with more arriving each day. The transformation event created a beacon that can be perceived across half the galaxy. Every species capable of interstellar travel knows that something significant happened here. The transformed humans exchanged glances. They had known their evolution would have consequences beyond their own colony, but they had not expected the response to be so immediate and widespread. We need to make a decision, Captain Lee said. Do we try to help the other species that are arriving? Do we share our transformation with them? The precursors left devices on many worlds, Yunji pointed out. But most species were too afraid to use them. We were the first to actually complete the transformation in thousands of years, which makes us responsible for what happens next, Hyunwoo said. Over the following weeks, delegations from dozens of different species arrived at Kepler 442. Some came seeking knowledge, others came seeking transformation. A few came with weapons, fearing that the evolved humans represented a threat to the galaxy. The transformed crew of the Harmony's Edge met with each group, sharing their experiences and offering guidance. They discovered that the transformation was not something that could be forced on unwilling subjects. It required a genuine desire to evolve, to transcend the limitations of normal existence. Some species, like a group of insectoid beings called the Hivari, embraced the opportunity immediately. They had always existed as a collective consciousness, so the expansion of awareness felt natural to them. Within days of activating a precursor device they had brought with them, the entire Hivari delegation had transformed into beings of light and thought. Others, like a delegation from the militaristic Koran Empire, rejected the transformation entirely. They feared losing their individual identities and their warrior culture. They left the system after studying the colony for several weeks, taking detailed records back to their leaders. But the most interesting visitors were a group of elderly beings from a species called the Eternal Wanderers. They had been traveling the galaxy for centuries, searching for traces of the precursors and studying the effects of their technology. We have waited so long for this day, their leader said during a meeting with Captain Lee. Our people chose long ago not to risk the transformation ourselves, but we hoped that someday another species would be brave enough to make the leap. Why did you not try it yourselves? Captain Lee asked. Fear, the Wanderer admitted. The same fear that has kept most species from using precursor technology. We preferred to remain as we were rather than risk becoming something unknown. And now we see that the risk was worth taking. You have shown us that evolution does not mean losing what makes you who you are. It means becoming more than you thought possible. Some of the Eternal Wanderers chose to undergo transformation after seeing the success of the human colony. Others decided to remain as they were, but to serve as bridges between the transformed beings and the unchanged species of the galaxy. As the months passed, the Kepler 442 system became a center of learning and evolution. Species from across the galaxy came to study the transformation process and decide whether they were ready to take the next step in their development. Hyunwoo found himself in a role he had never expected. As the one who had first discovered the button and made the decision to press it, he became a teacher and guide for others facing the same choice. The important thing to remember, he would tell new arrivals, is that transformation is not an ending. It is a beginning. You do not lose who you are. You become more than you were. Not every species that attempted the transformation survived it. Some were destroyed by the process, unable to handle the expansion of consciousness. Others vanished entirely, transcending to levels of existence that even the transformed humans could not perceive. But for those who succeeded, the rewards were extraordinary. They joined a growing community of evolved beings who could explore the universe in ways that had never been possible before. They became shepherds of consciousness, helping other species navigate their own paths to transcendence. HFY Song, now serving as a healer for beings across multiple dimensions, often reflected on how much they had all changed since that day. In the core chamber. "We thought we were just trying to survive a pirate attack," she said during one of their regular community meetings. "We never imagined we were taking the first step toward becoming something that could help the entire galaxy evolve." "The precursors knew," Captain Lee said. "They left their devices as gifts for species that were ready to grow beyond their current limitations. We just happened to be the first ones brave enough to accept the gift." The transformed colony on Kepler 442 continued to grow, not just in size, but in purpose. They established schools where newly transformed beings could learn to control their expanded abilities. They created research centers where the mysteries of higher dimensional existence could be studied. They built communication networks that allowed evolved species to share knowledge across vast distances instantly. But perhaps most importantly, they remained humble about their transformation. They never forgot that they had once been ordinary humans facing an impossible choice. They used that memory to help other species navigate their own moments of decision. As Hyunwoo stood once again on the observation deck, watching ships from dozens of different worlds arriving and departing, he thought about the button that had started it all. It was still there in the core chamber of the Harmony's edge, though the ship itself had been transformed beyond recognition. The button had been a test, but not the kind of test they had originally feared. It was not designed to destroy the unworthy. It was designed to offer opportunity to those brave enough to seize it. Humanity had passed the test not by being perfect, but by being willing to risk everything for the chance to become